Hello again, Sandwich. I'm Greg Anderson. The steps to be taken to update our town's constitution are in progress, guided by the Charter Review Committee. For several months now, this exercise has unearthed a host of considerations. Some are getting a lot of attention, others not so much. And you may recall last May's town meeting, people say they walked away feeling unclear about what was being discussed and what were they voting on and why. I wanted to know, where are we with the Charter Review right now? What is this committee doing? And why should you care? That's today's takeaway. All right, so let's talk about the Charter Review Committee and everything you're doing. My guest, Dave Sampson, you are the chair of the committee, correct?
I am the chair of the Charter Review Committee, yes.
Now, you are not chairman, or are you?
I think I am.
Chair?
I think I'm chairman.
Yes.
I think that being chairman is fine.
Yeah.
Gender neutrality is a topic of conversation as it relates to updating the charter, of course, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, but I'm chairman. I'm good with that.
Good. All right. Let me ask, so we have, there seems to be this atmosphere in the community where we create our own hysteria of panic and what's going on and what are they doing and blame and social media.
The infamous they. Who are these they?
Who are they? And do they live in Sandwich? That's the other question, especially
when it comes to online. Yeah, that's a big question.
But when we do look at we're talking about changing our town constitution, a big deal. And as you and I've talked about this, it's a lot of words, a lot of legalese almost. Tell me what the process is. I want to talk about where you are in the process, but what is that process for those who are not really connected to what is this committee doing and how do we change our constitution?
Sure. So the town charter exists as really the guidelines and rules of how the town is operated. So authority of committees, authority of the town manager, how elections operate, all of these different processes. At the end of the day, for the charter to be modified, and we're really in the process of more of a update of the charter than major moves at this point. But for the charter to be modified, it does need to be sent up by one of our state legislators. So Representative Exaros, Senator Moran have to take it up, and it ultimately has to be approved by the legislature to be enacted, whatever those changes may be. But before that happens, it does have to be approved by town meeting. So the process, to start a little bit earlier, the selectmen appointed the Charter Review Committee. We're really an advisory committee to the selectmen. So we don't have the authority to put articles on the town meeting warrant. We are just advisors to them. They could actually take our recommendations and choose to do something completely different or nothing at all. That's entirely within their authority. So we are making recommendations to them as a follow-up to the work that we did initially around these are the changes that are outstanding, and we will be making a recommendation regarding what the structure of articles maybe should look like for the next town meeting. They will likely carry that forward to a town meeting, and then based on the outcomes of the votes around those warrant articles, then it moves forward from there. So, and town council, of course, reviews the language before it goes to town meeting, so we can make sure that legally everything is in order. So as an advisory committee, we're really conveying intent to town council. Town council updates the language, and then the process moves on from there.
So do Senator Moran and Representative Exaros, do they have a say in this? They're bringing it up.
They don't. It's voted on. Yeah, they're the vehicle. Yeah. So it gets voted on by the voters who attend our town meeting.
So when we look at these issues, there are some issues, as I said at the open, there are some that are getting a lot of talk. A lot of people are interested, and others not so much. How does your group determine which ones you're going to focus on?
So we put a couple issues to bed at the annual town meeting last May. So one of those being transitioning the elected town clerk to an appointed town clerk.
Right.
So the language states that the existing elected town clerk will become an appointed town clerk at the end of his current term.
Right.
And again, that's subject to approval of this up at Beacon Hill. It has to get approved up there, so it gets baked in. So that issue is put to rest. That was one of the most controversial issues. The other one that was a very controversial issue was the concept of representative town meeting. And town meeting clearly stated they did not want us to pursue that. So we actually went to town meeting with a question and said, do you want us to pursue this further? They said no. The argument for representative town meeting really being we have an elected body that we know are our town meeting representatives, and they are accountable for being informed about the issues, attending the meeting, and interacting with folks, because we're somewhere around 17,000 plus registered voters in this town, and our town meetings average maybe generously 500-600 attendees, depending. It's really driven based on the issues. That's why people choose to attend.
Right. I want to learn a little bit about where you are in the process right now. So the committee was formed June of last year.
Right.
You meet on a regular basis. You brought yourselves to the town meeting in May, and then you went away, and you're back at work. What are you guys doing, and where are you?
Yeah, so we were appointed in June of last year. The existing charter says the town charter review committee should come together every 5 years as appointed by the selectmen for a term of no longer than 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
We really just haven't been able to get the amount of review and work completed in that time period. So we were reappointed by the selectmen in November of last year. And then we were reappointed again last July, because we were reappointed for another, I think through the end of the fiscal year, through June 30th. So they've asked us to continue our service. All of the members of the Charter Review Committee have chosen to go ahead and do that. So all of the issues that we dealt with at town meeting last year, those are put to bed.
Yeah.
Some of the items that came up as questions, specifically from the Finance Committee, as an example, we had 3 initiatives we brought to town meeting. So there was the representative town meeting, which I mentioned, which failed, the appointed town clerk, which carried, and then there was an article of other changes, gender neutrality, the spending authority of the town manager,
And
a number. They were all bundled into this other article, right? So the message that we received at town meeting was we don't want all this stuff bundled together, and come back. So at the beginning of August, we had our first meeting. We had a meeting with the selectmen actually in June, just as kind of a, post-event recap.
Yeah.
We met at the beginning of August, and then we've actually met every Tuesday during September to try to get our job done. We have great interest in getting our job done, and that included collaboration with the Finance Committee and the Library Board of Trustees about a couple things.
What is the what happened at the town meeting? That in May, it seemed like, people show up, WWE, they're ready to rumble when they step into that auditorium based on their ideas and agendas and the issues. It seemed as if the charter discussion came up and it just got confused. You had someone saying, no one talked to us about it. And you have people up in arms about some of the pieces in that were all bundled or rolled up. Was that just a mess?
I think the town meeting was more challenging than it has been, generally speaking. I would describe it as a stadium-like environment,
yeah.
and it doesn't allow business to be conducted, right? I know, generally speaking, the perception of me is that I'm usually very serious when we're trying to get things done, because I just want to get things done. I want to use everybody's time in the best way possible, and on some levels, that meeting just was not being controlled by the moderator.
Yeah.
And I think that additional factors that contributed to that were our PowerPoint deck never made it to the presentation system. So we were conveying all of our thoughts, just through speeches more than anything else. The town moderator did not allow us the right amount of time to present what we needed to present. So he was holding us to a 5-minute rule, which even town council advised him was not necessary, given that we were there as representatives of the town trying to convey the meaning of these articles. And I think that really snowballed and just kind of put the wrong energy in the room, and people were disinterested in continuing the discussion.
Yeah.
And, one of the things about being an advisory committee and us being the charter review committee is I'm not personally trying to sell something or project ideas. I'm really trying to help people understand what has existed and the deliberations that have taken place among our group who've spent a lot of time, why we've come to the conclusions that we've reached. Why does this make sense? And all of our meetings are open to the public like any other meeting. We had a very large public forum prior to town meeting to get input last spring, and there's about 60 people there, which was great. We had a public forum this week, and there was about 8 people there that attended from the public.
So what does that say? I mean,
well, the reality is that a lot of people don't attend public meetings in the first place. There's some number of those people that are watching public meetings at home. So one thing that is a great benefit that occurs through Sandwich Community Television is the availability to watch public meetings live at home. And I'm sure that there was a number of people that were watching. I think among the most interesting or controversial new items that are on the table is the number of signatures required to put a citizens initiative article on the warrant.
So let's start. Let's go there, because I do have some questions about it. It was 10.
So so it's 10.
Yeah.
And that actually comes from Mass General Law. And I wish that I had the explanation of why, but annual town meetings, the requirement is 10. Special town meetings, the requirement is 50. No, 100. I'm sorry, it's 100. So why is that?
Yeah, why is that?
I honestly, I don't know. It's in Mass General Law that way. So we did vote as a updated recommendation to move that from 10 to 50 for an annual town meeting, but to leave the special town meeting alone at 100. During our last public forum, which we had this week, some members of the community came and said, geez, why are we making this different?
Yeah.
And I personally agree. Why do we have two different things? What's the difference between bringing a warrant article to a annual town meeting versus a special? But either way, I do believe that if you want to bring a cause before the people, you should have the right to do that. But if you don't have any support for that cause, then you're really just wasting everybody's time.
Yeah.
So if you can't find 100 signatures to back your cause, and those are just signatures, they don't have to support the issue or your opinion, but they have to say, you know what, this is worth considering. If you can't find 100 signatures, should we be bringing this to the business of the meeting?
What about the frequency upon which petitions can come back, the bottle, plastic thing?
That's a topic of conversation. And kind of, I'm just going to say the punchline on that is this. We could do a number of different things to make changes or recommend changes around putting limits on repeat articles, preventing them from coming back. The challenge becomes this. What becomes a repeat article? Because a repeat article is the same, returning with the same language, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have to modify very much language,
right?
And it's no longer the same. So again, not a good use of anybody's time to try to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. And the number of articles, that's up for...
No, there's no limits on the number of articles.
I thought there was... why did I think 21?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
That's about an average number of how many articles we have.
Could there be 100?
There could be.
Yeah.
And I would bet you that if we went back in history, those times existed.
Talk a little bit about the increased role or the adjustments in the Finance Committee's ability to negotiate, or is that a monetary issue?
Yeah, so the Finance Committee is a body that represents the taxpayers. They're appointed by the town moderator. Their actual authority to spend or those types of things is almost non-existent in some cases, right? Their job is to be advisors to town meeting regarding the budget. Mm-hmm. So they are supposed to do research, ask questions before the budget is presented to town meeting so they can deliver a report. They do have some authority when it comes to moving money and money transfers. Mm-hmm. So language has been added to include the Finance Committee from a kind of a reporting perspective, and also from the perspective of meeting with other town bodies on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. That wasn't there before. That's some of the most significant changes as it pertains to the Finance Committee. Part of what we learned meeting with the finance committee was their desire for some of those meetings to change in format, if you will. So the legacy charter, the existing charter, says that the selectmen are supposed to meet with the finance committee after annual town meeting, but before June 15th, to basically do budget planning for the next 2 fiscal years beyond the upcoming fiscal year.
Yeah.
So we don't get data from the state about what's happening with the budget for the fiscal year that's about to happen.
Yeah.
Never mind years ahead. So in our meetings as the charter committee, we said, this is a meeting that doesn't make sense. Myself and Sue James, former selectman, the meeting doesn't even happen sometimes. So that meeting that last time it happened was in 2019. So geez, does this make sense?
Right.
So as an example, we collaborated with the finance committee, and now there'll be a different meeting. We took the timeline away, but basically mandating or encouraging a strategy session to occur sometime after the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah. Okay. Gender neutral language.
Yes.
Seems reasonable.
I think generally speaking, not the most controversial issue. I think it's controversial for some folks. As a selectman, I was asked by members of the community to spearhead a name change for the select board, the selectmen to select board, but it's not really in the authority of the selectmen to decide what their name is. This is the vehicle to do that. That being said, if we send the document or the desired document to Beacon Hill and gender neutral language is not present, they will reject it and send it back. So gender neutral language is effectively a requirement of the Commonwealth.
Interesting. Okay. What other hot topics are you hearing? I'm interested in what you guys as a committee are focused on, but also what are you hearing from people out in the community that say, this is a big deal?
So I don't know that there's a ton of buzz about this in the community other than the signature issue at the present time. I think some of the things that have come up as items of concern, the charter says that the Charter Review Committee should be convened every 5 years. We've recommended moving that to every 10 years. The charter is generally formed, and we're kind of making updates. Do we need to pull people together and review all this language in detail every 5 years? It's probably unnecessary. It's a lot of work. It's very tedious work going through this document, and just candidly, it's a lot more than I imagined that it would be. But on the flip side of that, for those that are concerned, geez, they're not going to look at the charter now except for every 10 years. That doesn't make sense to me. I want it reviewed every 5 years.
Right.
The reality is that the charter can be changed anytime. The selectmen have the right to call a charter review committee at any time.
Yeah.
The selectmen have the ability to put an article on the warrant to change the charter at any time. And the residents of the community have the ability to put together a citizen's petition to change the charter at any time. So pulling together a committee of people, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? And I know folks get concerned about these types of things. They're like, geez, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But if something comes down the pike that's significant that we need to look at changing it, there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Yeah. A topic that I had heard about, town manager's residency. In the charter, it says that he or she needs to live in the community. Yes,
it does. It says that the town manager must reside in the community, and I believe it says that if they don't, they need to within 6 months.
Okay. Is that at all a part of the discussion?
So we've deleted the residency requirement from the charter.
Why?
And really, the reality is that there is a limited amount of qualified candidates to sit in municipal seats. It's just the truth. So I would predict that within the next 5+ years, we're going to be hiring a new town manager. It's a very reasonable expectation. And when that happens, we want to get the biggest pool of qualified candidates that we can. And that is a roadblock item to doing that. And that is why the residency requirement is being recommended to be removed.
So the whole residency requirement, not the, you got to wait.
Yes.
You got to within 6
the
months.
entire thing. You know, one of the things that's changed over time, and probably maybe people from our generation would have better perspective, but you know, we think about things like school superintendents and town managers in current times, right? So our existing town manager started working here, I think, in 1989.
Yeah.
Right. And he's worked here for his entire career, and he's a tremendous asset to the town. But, when I was a kid, we had the school superintendent, Joe Nicholson. He worked in Sandwich for, 15, 20 years. I can't tell you. Peter Canoni, he worked here for 10 plus years. But now folks don't stay in these seats for as long as they once did.
Yeah.
These seats are turning over much more often. So look at the school superintendent in Sandwich, right? We've changed school superintendents again. Pam Gould was superintendent for maybe six years.
Yeah.
7 years, something like that. So if that's going to continue to be the trend, we're going to be challenged in limiting ourselves if we're not opening up that pool of candidates as wide as possible, or forcing a relocation as part of taking the job.
Right. You said the flip side to that is you're going to have someone that, with all due respect to Taunton, you're going to have someone that lives in Taunton that's not as invested in our community as you and I are that live here.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable argument. The town manager works for the selectmen, right? So if that person is not acting in the best interests of the community, there's ways to deal with that.
Lessons learned from you being on this committee and what you think needs to be a priority for you guys going forward.
I think there's always more opportunity to get feedback. Maybe some of the things that we could have done better was to engage with the finance committee earlier. I don't love the fact that we have to wait to get to town meeting floor to get some of these issues out on the table and then go ahead and regroup.
So unpack that a little bit. The finance committee, was it at town meeting and everything that went on?
Yeah. So at town meeting, the finance committee said, "Geez, these guys didn't get input from us, and they're making all these changes to things that we see that apply to us, and we're totally against this."
And that is an aha for you guys.
It was unexpected. It was unexpected, right? If it was me, I probably would have found an opportunity to get it to the table in a way that didn't include bringing it to town meeting. But everybody has the right to do as they wish, and that's okay with me. I just think there was a better approach available, and that's not what happened. So it's okay.
So the transparency, are you hearing from all the constituents that you feel need to be heard? You're not getting a lot of attendance, meaning if you only had 8 people show up, maybe more
that was like
on TV.
That was probably a record number of attendance in general, to be honest with you, other than the public forum that we had last year. Another item that's kind of come up too, that, so a couple of things have popped up that weren't there in the spring, which is okay. There's nothing that prohibits us from doing that. So the school committee has said, geez, we're the only elected body in the town charter that's prohibited from being compensated. We're not asking to be compensated, but we'd like that removed.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, we'll go ahead and remove that. I think there's concern that the school committee is going out to seek to be compensated for their roles.
Yeah, understand.
I don't believe that's the case. Okay. They don't want to be singled out on the charter, though, either. But I think that if they went out and sought to be compensated, like the selectmen are, with a stipend of a few $1,000s a year, I don't think it would be received very well. It would have to be approved by town meeting. So even if we delete this, that doesn't mean that they can start paying themselves. It would have to be voted on at town meeting, like the stipends for the other elected officials.
Yeah.
The other piece that we've also talked about is a moratorium for any school committee members, basically prohibiting them from employment with the Sandwich Public Schools for 12 months following their service, which is also in place for the selectmen. So we said, okay, if this exists over here, and we want to level set things a little bit more, why aren't we thinking about this as well? And I don't think that's as clear or as unanimous across the Charter Review Committee necessarily, but it is something that is likely to be recommended. We did take a vote on it, but I have a feeling there'll be additional discussions.
So there's 7 of you. How do you guys work together?
I think at this point, it's so 7 of us showed up in July of last year. A couple folks who have participated in this process previously, so that was good, and we started working our way through that document. I think there's very good balance across the group. Everybody's been very dedicated to continuing to work on this. it is very tedious work going through this language. There's a lot of detail.
What do you think that your neighbors, people in the community, how are they responding to the charter committee and the narrative that's coming out of the process?
There's not a lot of chatter about this at the moment, to be honest with you. And I think one of the reasons for that is that we don't have a date on the calendar for an additional town meeting. So it looks at the moment like there will not be a special town meeting before the end of the calendar year. That's not likely until January or February of next year.
Okay.
I think that once that date gets put on the calendar, this will start to get a lot more attention, right? So it's like when we had, prior to annual town meeting, the 60 folks showed up at our meeting to get more information. My guess is as we get closer, those with interest will start to take note much more of what's going on.
So why not get this done sooner than later? Why not have a special town meeting in this calendar year? And
so there's two drivers for the potential special town meeting. Okay. And this could be carried to annual town meeting. There's nothing that says we have to have a special town meeting, but there's two drivers. One is this, and the other is the local comprehensive plan. So based on where we are in both of those processes and timing, when a warrant would need to be published, it's unlikely, if impossible, to get that done for a date prior to Thanksgiving, based on where we are today. So that pushes us into a window of time that is the holidays, that we go into next year, and then I know some folks leave town for the winter. Mm-hmm. Choosing that date is ultimately up to the selectmen. I've conveyed to them that I'm willing to be agreeable, regardless of what they choose, figure out how to get it done. But I think we're not going to see a special town meeting until January, February. It was discussed at the selectmen's meeting last night. I'm not sure they've come to a final decision, but it doesn't look hopeful for this calendar year.
So for those that are maybe at home watching your activities with this committee and reading about it in the newspaper, a little bit more passive, what is it that you want them to know about this process? And like I said at the beginning, why should I care?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece is we want input. So we're looking for more input if folks are concerned. And I think folks expressed a fair amount of concern at town meetings. So we want that input. And that's the biggest message I want people to come away with. We're not trying to operate in a vacuum. At the end of the day, when we started this conversation, you were referring to the they, right? And I often think of it as the we, even though I know people don't necessarily believe that.
Yeah.
But if you have concerns
believe
about
that as your opinion.
No, people
don't think you think it's a
no. People don't think of it as the we. They think of it as the they.
Yep.
Right. I think of it as the we because at the end of the day, whether I'm selectman or not, which I'm no longer selectman, I pay taxes here and I consume town services just the same as everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So if you're concerned about the process and how the process works and what's happening or what's not happening or what you see as something that maybe you think is standing out as not being treated equally or whatever it might be, the charter document is the document that drives how town government works.
Right.
And if you have concerns, you don't like the way that it works, this is your opportunity for input to change that. Just like if you have concerns about any town issue, the town is a very transparent, public document-driven organization. So we don't need to sit on Facebook necessarily and speculate. We can actually just drive downtown and go ask a couple questions and get the information that we're looking for.
I'll tell you, it's just not as fun. To go on and go on anonymous on a Facebook post or stand up at town meeting and kind of pound your fist. It's a hell of a lot more dramatic.
Well, I could change hats into my cybersecurity technology public speaker role and speak to you about how social media feeds negativity. But I think you've just given the example, right? But people do like to feed that negativity and speculate. It's very easy, but the reality is that vehicle does not provide any real input to the process.
Yeah.
And as I try to do here and there, I try to inject the facts so that people do know what's going on. And I'm not bulletproof, but I don't have a problem doing that, even if folks want to criticize me for whatever they may believe I have done, haven't done well enough. I mean, at the end of the day, all of the folks that are running the town from an elected or appointed official perspective are pretty much volunteers. These people are all volunteering. So if you want to have a voice, the charter is an opportunity to participate. Town meeting is an opportunity to be heard. The ballot box is an opportunity to be heard. But if you want to make a difference, if you want things to be different, step into the arena and speak up. It's not through an anonymous Facebook post, because that accomplishes nothing.
While I have you here, shifting gears from the charter review, the discussion has been so potent lately about the way the town is managing. You were saying they're transparent, but permits aren't being pulled. The playground. There's this us versus them dynamic that seems to be getting louder as it relates to what the town is doing or saying or not. What's your take on all of that?
So if we're going to talk about playgrounds, that's schools, not the town. But I'll still tell you my opinion.
Okay.
But so the playground project and what's happening with the schools is, I think, where most of that conversation is happening today. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So I'd say this.
But getting a permit from the town doesn't the town have a...
Well, so if you've pulled a building permit before, if you want to get a building permit, generally speaking, you need plans that are stamped by a qualified engineer to get the permit, or they don't issue the permit. So all of these school projects, so we did the funding initiative for capital funding last spring for the schools, and the schools have started to run with those projects in the playgrounds. And I know a lot of folks have been very frustrated with the playground situation. And there's some obstacles there that I've observed. One is the playgrounds are a renovation project, right? So there's probably multiple layers of playgrounds there. And I know that among the things that have occurred is they've found materials on those sites that they didn't expect to find. So that's an issue. Kicking off work without building permits, it wasn't because the town didn't issue them. It's because they weren't requested, to my understanding. I'm not an expert on this, but I've spent a lot of time with a lot of people on the phone who have asked me for my opinion on what I see, or if something nefarious has happened here, or what's going on. So I know that was a challenge. I don't understand how construction was started or thought that it would be okay without pulling building permits. This is very basic stuff. And candidly, between the owner's project manager, which the town is obligated to hire to manage the project, Pomeroy Associates, who they manage the public safety complex. They did the new Center for Active
Living. They know what they're doing.
These guys are very professional, and they've delivered very consistent results for the town. So I don't really understand how we didn't have a building permit, or that there was an oversight around the depth of these pillars below the frost line. I am not a construction person, but I am pretty aware that that's what needs to occur. But just a little bit bigger picture, right? So we said we have a bunch of school capital problems to solve, and we allocated funding to the schools to go out and do that. The school committee has not run any large capital projects in a long time. Kind of some of the bigger things I can think of, maybe 10 years ago, there was $1 million to fix the pool. But this is a very public-facing project with the playgrounds. Parents have gotten behind it. The school committee is trying to manage a lot of other issues that we see that are going on. And, it's challenging, right? But at the end of the day, when it comes to schools, the school committee are the people that are accountable for the performance of the schools, right? The school committee and the school superintendent. So there are some pieces there that I think have been very frustrating to people. They don't make sense. I think that some of the messaging that has come out has set bad expectations. So if we tell people at a public meeting that this is what's happening, we need to be really sure that's exactly what's happening. We don't have a lot of leeway there. So
this notion that there is a, the barrier in front of town hall, we don't really need to deal with it. Those types of issues seem to, they continue to cause a stink in the air.
Well, like the historic district committee issues, right?
Exactly.
They do, and that really drives a entirely different discussion probably about the boardwalk, right? So I haven't been an elected official now for close to 18 months probably, but if we want to look at the issue of why did the town push on the Historic District Committee about the 2-year permit, and why didn't they just go refile the application?
Right.
I doubt that you'll see a elected official or appointed official that works for the town say this, but the reason that didn't happen seems really clear to me, because when we look historically at what happened during the permitting process previously, why would the town go back to open that process again, given the level of controversy and appeals that occurred? So I can understand why they did it. It wasn't against the Historic District Committee. It's really about, we need to get this project done. We have a contractor that we've engaged to complete the work, and if we don't get it done on schedule, it's going to be very costly to the taxpayers. It's not about a contest in every case. We can debate that. I don't think that it's necessarily like an arrogant move by the town, but the boardwalk is a very controversial issue. It continues to be a very controversial issue. And I just saw people talking about it today, right? The boardwalk was destroyed by a storm. We're rebuilding the structure. It has to meet code. That's what the law says. We've been talking about this since 2018. It's 5 years later. No one has found the loophole to reconstruct the historic Sandwich Boardwalk in its original form. Yeah. I invite anyone to please call me and tell me. Doesn't seem to exist.
I'm not going to let you leave here until you tell me a little bit about your takeaways from your run for the commissioner for the Water District.
Happy to do it.
You got
slammed,
skunked,
destroyed, which is fine.
Historically, I mean, we've sat here at this desk, we've talked about it, the challenger at that time, the incumbent, the 12, 10 people voted every year.
Right.
Now there's like 600. What happened? Right. What's your takeaway?
Well, we
don't have a lot of time.
I know. We're turning this into an hour program. We're done.
Hey, Paula, we're going.
You know what? The objective of me entering that race was to raise the line of visibility and make people aware that they are being taxed by a municipal authority and they have elected representatives there that they don't know about. So we definitely raised the bar on the issue. I do believe that folks who want to remain in elected office, they should work to remain in that office. Mm-hmm. I'm unconvinced that that part has really been achieved. They certainly went out and worked very hard to get their supporters out to vote in the direction that they wanted them to vote, right? I mean, my numbers were terrible. It was a joke. Yeah. Terrible. But we ran a very issues-focused campaign, kept it completely above board, no personal attacks by me or any folks related to me whatsoever. We wanted to raise awareness about the issue. We accomplished that, but I think the sad part is that when I think about the energy and honestly financial investments that we made in raising the bar on this issue, there's been no change. Nothing has come from it to address the issues that I brought up during the campaign. And I think my opponent worked very hard to get the voters out, and I commend him for that. Did a great job. I personally conceded the race to him at Captain Scott's across the street. At the end of the night, I thanked him for his service and congratulated him. But as we look forward now, right? Because I made it an issue, the information for the Water District's annual meeting was updated on their website. Their website still has the exact same image on it from back when that annual meeting occurred. It's never changed. So the minutes from their meetings are still not available, right? And I think at the end of the day for me, right, as a taxpayer in the Water District, I really have to question who those elected representatives are working for, right? So if we support them, that's great. There is a pretty costly health benefit that is available to those elected officials at the Water District as well as the appointed clerk of the district, right? So if we can spend, as elected officials representing the taxpayers, we can spend tens of thousands of dollars a year on providing health benefits to ourselves, but we can't find funding to update a website or make minutes available to the public, that is just wrong. I don't care who won the race. Yeah. And making those points was really my objective.
Have you gone to meetings since then?
I haven't, and I try to, but the reality is this. I am extremely busy with my professional commitments, and I have to prioritize that. It's unfortunate that the only way I can get those minutes for those meetings is to basically go down there and ask for them or email over there. And, they're not really running an open door policy over there. I still stick to those guns.
Yeah.
The positive news is that when I did concede the race to Mr. Thomas, he told me that we would get together and talk about the issues.
Has that happened? You're still waiting.
No messages.
So people will say, you've got a hell of an ego. You like to run a race. You have sat in the top seat in town as a selectman, chairman of the select board. You're going after this blue collar guy in a small little, it's all about your ego.
Yeah, no, it's not personal. I really just, I think that the center of the truth is pretty easy to find. And I think my argument's pretty valid. It's a simple, valid argument. I don't know.
Do you think well, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, I honestly don't know that I have the capacity or time to do it. So
but if you got,
we'll see what happens in the spring.
If you became commissioner, you would have been able.
100%. I would have reprioritized based on my commitment to the folks of the taxpayers of the water district.
Are we going to see more contested races at the water district? Do you think?
I don't know. So I would say that one thing I learned last spring is that there's other people in my camp who believe that this needs to be addressed. And at the end of the day, right, we talk about updating the charter, right? Yeah. Modernizing the charter. The water district just stays in the same place. And I don't have a personal issue with anybody there. And I think they run a very good operation, as I've stated previously. But in current times, it's unacceptable to not provide what are really now basic levels of transparency to the community, to the taxpayers. I mean, one of the things that I've learned in my kind of post-election research, and I only have certain amounts of time to dedicate to some of this work, right? I'm very, very busy with my professional commitments. But one of the things I learned, so the water district sits as an outlier where they cover 90% of the health insurance costs for anybody that takes benefits from them.
Right.
And that occurs through the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, which is a consortium of municipalities across the Cape and Islands that all kind of collectively buy health insurance. And one of the things I learned talking to some other municipal personnel that I know for a variety of reasons is that I said, geez, what is the contribution rate? This 90% thing, it doesn't seem. I mean, I don't know if anybody's paying for 90% of your health insurance. I know who's paying for my health insurance.
Yeah.
But they said, well, with the water districts and the fire districts, and we talked about this when we met here previously, like Barnstable has separate fire districts and such with elected officials, very similar model. It's a very common model for the fire districts and the water districts to pay high percentages of employee health insurance. Well, why would that be? It's because it benefits the elected officials in elections that have very low levels of visibility. How is that fair to the taxpayers? I'm not going after anybody, right? But when we talk about this, health insurance is very costly.
Yeah.
So if you, as a commissioner of a water or fire district, attend one meeting a month for 45 minutes, are you entitled to a $50,000 a year value health insurance benefit? Does that make sense?
Well, you haven't gotten an answer to that, have you?
I just asked you.
But, well, I mean,
but it doesn't make sense.
It's not a satisfied. You can't scratch that itch.
So
you're not getting satisfied, but you're not going to run again.
We'll see what happens.
You don't know.
We'll see what happens. The water district, I would say that generally speaking, the supporters of the water district are extremely opposed to my candidacy. They have gone out of their way to be as vocal as possible on social media and locally. And I can take the heat. That's not an issue. But at some point, you need to determine what's the best use of your time. That being said,
it'll be interesting to see if somebody runs.
I might come back just to stir the pot. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's not about ego. I mean, whatever folks' perception of me may be, right? I mean, there's a certain number of people who actually know me. There's a lot of folks that see me do things and they just think I'm being arrogant and crazy and blazing probably, right? But at the end of the day, I really care about helping people. I enjoy volunteering. I enjoy contributing to the greater good. And you know this, I think, as well as a lot of other folks, but, I had a resident call me last night at 10 o'clock. They're upset about something that happened with the selectmen's meeting, and they had some questions about it. I was out to dinner with my friends. I said, excuse me, please. I went outside and talked to them for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to help almost anyone with anything to the best of my ability, and also to educate folks to best understand the process so that they can do a better job participating themselves and finding the outcomes that they're looking for.
Right. All right. We're going to end on that note. We covered a lot.
We did. I'm sorry. We probably went over our time.
I think actually Patrick and Paula have left for the day. So I think it's just you and me in the studio alone.
Is the scotch
Keep
here?
going. Yeah, exactly. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully this was informative and helpful to you as you understand some of these issues that we just talked about. I'm Greg Anderson. This is The Takeaway, and I'll see you soon.